Good morning, everyone. Today, I'm going to talk about pink belly side neck turtles. You're watching 221B Reptiles.
Thank you for being a friend. Travel down the road and back again. Your heart is true. You're a pal and a confidant. And if you threw a party, he invited everyone you knew. You would see the biggest gift would be from me, and the card attached would say, "Thank you for being a friend."
Described by Kreft in 1872, these wonderful little turtles can be found in Australia and New Guinea. They live in ponds, swamps, seasonal pools. They like dark water, and they can also be found in brackish water. In the wild, they feed on plant matter, fish, mollusks, crustaceans, bugs. Actually, they eat anything that falls in the water, including fruits. Carry on, you get the idea. They eat whatever they can. Now, I keep a pair in a 75-gallon fish tank. I provide a basking area, and in this basking area I have a heat bulb that provides just a heat source, a localized heat source of about 90 to 92 degrees. I also provide a high input UVB bulb. The ambient temperature in the reptile room is about 75 degrees, and the turtles also have a water heater in the water that keeps the water at a constant temperature of 78. Now, I don't keep a filter in this aquarium. I do a water change once or twice a week as needed. Like I said before, these animals can be found in swamps, slow-moving waters. Sometimes they can be found in dark water. So, I try to keep not a low pH, but a lower pH. Where I live, the pH in my tap water is about 7.2, 7.4, depending on the season. So originally I cycled the aquarium with a lot of wood and leaves to provide tannins and to lower the pH in the water. I waited about, I don't know, let's say 2 weeks for the water to cycle. Then I start to add fish, because if the water is good enough for fish, it's good enough for turtles, usually. Now, with all this preparation in mind, I managed to keep a pH of around 6.8 to 7.0. 0.0. Yeah, 0.0. As you can see, these turtles are designed to fly in the water. Now, these are not fly river turtles, but when you really look at this turtle engineering, you can see that they are built to swim. They rarely bask. That is something that I noticed. They bask sometimes, but very rarely. I like to keep them outside during the summer sometimes, so they can get natural UV, natural sunlight, but as soon as they see bright light, they usually hide. So, I used to have a bright light in there, okay, for the plants, for the fish. It was extraordinary and beautiful. And then I noticed that the turtles wouldn't really swim, they would just stand and try to hide under the basking area. So, after observing these animals, I came to the conclusion that they probably thrive better in lower light, or like I said, if these animals are really designed to survive in dark water, so they can avoid predators, and they have a bright colored belly so that when they come up to the surface, if there's a predator in the water, the predator looks up and doesn't really see the turtle, because the reflection of the sun plus the bright color of the plastron equals bright light and nothing else for the predator. Yeah, that was a pretty rudimentary explanation, but there you go. Then I switched to a lower input light. So the lights are a little bit, not dim, but I've got a lower light. And I try to keep the water not dark water. I would love to do a dark water tank, but it's very hard to maintain and to create. Once the dark water aquarium is cycled, you don't have to do anything. But to get to that point, it takes a lot of patience, a lot of knowledge, and, well, mostly patience. And, well, I'm patient, but the turtles and the fish are not really patient or excited about anything. So, there you go. That's how I keep these animals in a kind of semi-natural setup. I have floating plants, I have fake plants, so plastic plants for the structure, and I also have real plants, mostly attached in the back, closer to the light, so that way I have not a filtration, but a little cycle going on. The fish are always browsing on algae and little leftover food by the turtles, so yeah. So what do I feed them? Well, I'm glad you asked. I like to feed them turtle pellets. Usually I like to pick 2 or 3 different brands or types, just for variety. I also like to give them, obviously, aquatic plants that they like to nibble on. Aquatic snails, crustaceans, fish, you know, I like to provide variety. I've never tried offering them banana, mango, fruits, or carrion, or that sort of thing. They would probably eat it in the wild, but I'm not ready to pollute my water with rotten bananas and carrion. So now you know how I feed these animals. So as you can see, these are not really large turtles yet. They're born quite small, about an inch and a half, and after, depending on how you feed them and if they're in an aquarium or if they're in the wild, usually they can attain a size of about 8, maybe 10 inches after 5 to 8 years, depending on how you feed them, how you take care of them. Now, where I live, it is not allowed for people to have small turtles. So I had to purchase turtles that were actually 4 inches. So I went to one of the... I can recommend this breeder. I order these animals as juveniles. I ordered a pair. So the male is about 5.5 inches, and the female is about 4.5 inches. What I noticed is that females grow a little bit slower than the males, but if you can hear, that's a bird. Males are usually smaller than the females when they're adults. but the males grow faster. So that is why, right now, the male is a little bit bigger than the female. I like to... I don't know how can I explain this. I'm gonna put it... Let's put it this way. I like to grow turtles very slowly. When turtles grow fast, when you power feed them, not power feed them, when you overfeed them, there's a difference. Maybe one day I'll do an episode, you know, overfeeding versus power feeding, but we'll talk about it later. Usually when you overfeed a turtle when it's very young, it will grow very fast, and that's great. It's a great natural advantage, but it's not really good for the structure of mostly of the carapace and the plastron, but let's say for a bone structure of a turtle, and actually most reptiles, depending on what species, again, we're talking about turtles. That's what I do. If you're comfortable, do it, but if not, don't do it. But what I do, I like to grow turtles and tortoises very slowly. So they can build up their reserves. They have a natural or close to nature, more natural growth. Because when they grow too fast, the scoots can become very flimsy-wimsy. You've got the scoots that grow too fast, and then the carapace is not solid. It's just, it can grow deformities, very subjected to fungus. I've noted that this is just a personal observation, right? When people overfeed turtles, even with the greatest filtration system in the world, the tiny particle of protein in the water makes it that the animals are prone to fungus, scale rot, or shell rot. So with a, generous, but not too generous feeding schedule, good water changes, a good source of UVB, lots of fish to cycle the water. This is what I do. I've tried to maintain an ecosystem that is, relatively stable. Even if I miss water change, the water never changes its quality. There's always some specks running around that is either some food left over, because sometimes when the turtles eat the food very, very fast, they do like microparticles, and the fish eat it right away. So that's because I fed them this morning, so there's a little bit of specks, which I try to control because I want to avoid shell rot, and I don't want to overfeed the animals, obviously. Another thing that is very interesting about these turtles, they require what I call a living water. What I call a living water, if the water is stable enough to maintain fish and plants and algae, but not too much, it means that there is oxygen in this water. This water is alive. It's not just tap water like this and dechlorininator and a lot of this or that and reverse osmosis of whatever. This water is really alive, I do the water changes, I add water, there's always a constant supply of oxygen in this water. Why is he talking about oxygen? Well, these turtles actually can breathe with their cloaca. I know it's weird, but that's a natural adaptation. They ooze, they use, they ooze, they ooze, they use. They use this breathing mechanism to survive in deep water, deep waters, plural, singular, whatever. I know a lot of breeders will tell you, well, my turtles are basking. A lot of other breeders say, hey, my turtles bask, you know, in the spring, in the summer, they lay their eggs, and then boom, they go back in the water, and they practically never bask. So that's another observation and information that you may want to keep in mind, or not. It's your choice. So now you know how I try to maintain these wonderful little creatures, the pink belly side neck turtles. If you like turtles, and especially if you like fish, let me know. I'll be more than happy to do more videos about turtles and fish. Turtles are reptiles, so it counts as, 2-1B reptiles. If you want me to talk about fish, especially guppies and, racing guppies and pink guppies, that sort of thing, please feel free to request in the comments. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to this wonderful, friendly, open-minded channel. If you have any requests or recommendations, about this setup, feel free to comment. I know a lot of people will try to say, hey, why is this water not clean, Well, it's because, like I said, I try to cycle this water in a natural fashion, A lot of people are saying, hey, but what about shell rot? You talked about shell rot. Well, yes, but there's a difference between dirty water, dark water, living water, and just plain shell rot recipe water. Just blah. A lot of people try to keep these turtles very clean, and they end up with not shell rot, but they end up with skin rot. That is because the water is not alive. The water is too clean, there's not enough oxygen, the water is not cycled enough, and the animals basically are trying to tell you, hey, this water is a little bit too clean. I like it, it's awesome, you like it, but I need a little bit of life in my water. That is something I learned the hard way. That is why I'm trying to share this with you. I like to keep my fish, most of my aquariums, really clean. And when I got these guys, I had the filter and the heater and the UVB and the this and the that. And then I noticed the animals started to develop these like weird turtle dandruff, on their skin. I did a little bit of research, and that's because the animals were not in a living water condition, what I call living water or cycled water. Now I switch to this more natural or semi-natural setup. I'd like to add a lot of rocks, a lot of branches, and do a real dark water tank. That would be really great for these guys, but it's something that really takes a lot of time, a lot of patience, and the final result is not always considered as a beautiful experience for an aquarium. Dark water tank is basically brown water, lots of tannins, very acid water. Usually, and that's another thing that I learned, watching fish and turtles, is that when you see a bright colored fish or a brightly colored turtle, like these guys, there's a great chance that this animal is from a dark water environment. So now you know everything I know about pink belly turtles and dark water. I hope you like this funny episode about these guys, and I hope that you will like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel, a little clickety click, and I'll see you very soon for another episode of 221B Reptiles.